Part 2. DooBeeDooBeeDoo.
DooBeeDooBeeDoo.
Sorry. Okay, Sunny.
2 minutes, Tom. 2 minutes.
Right. What were we talking about? I forgot.
What were we talking about? The concept of Asphalt Orchestra?
Yeah, with the choreography and
Good.
So.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Asphalt Orchestra. Next is Baraat.
Red Baraat, yeah.
Baraat.
Red Baraat, yep.
Is it Indian and an Indian word?
It is. Baraat is like a procession that happens in North India during a wedding. Here come the New York City fire trucks. Woo. Baraat is a procession that happens in North India. Oh, I was wrong. It's ambulance.
New York, New York, New York, New York, New York.
All right, we're back. So it's a procession that happens during a wedding time from a groom side to the bride side. It involves like singing, dancing, dhol drum, which is a Punjabi drum that I play, horns. It's a big joyous celebration, basically pre-wedding procession. So that's the name Red Baraat. It's kind of borrowing from the Indian brass band tradition, something that's existed like since the 16th century, and that you find in North India practically every wedding.
Okay.
There's like, it's almost like the territory bands of the States back in the 30s, you know, of the jazz bands, where they have literally 40 brass bands in every city.
Right.
When in India, it's like you don't have a celebration or some joyous occasion without a brass band, and some dhol players show up as well, you know. So it's a band I lead that's rooted in the Punjabi rhythms, but it's an American band in the sense that there's funk coming in, go-go, jazz, Latin music. We're all musicians that were born and raised in America and have various influences musically that enter into the music. It's a 9-piece band.
And it's your main band, right?
It's the main band that I'm leading right now, yes. It's a 9-piece band, 6 brass and 3 drums.
Okay.
Including a drum set player, percussionist, myself on dhol.
Okay.
And then a sousaphone player, 5 horn players. Yeah.
And then you have your quartet, right? The Brooklyn.
No,
with the saxophone.
Yeah, I have a jazz group where I play drum set in. I've released a couple of CDs previously under the name Jain Collective.
Ah, yes, Jain.
My last album was called Taboo, and that was just under my name, Jain. And that was addressing various social justice issues, such as homosexuality, violence towards women, political injustices that you find perhaps in the motherland, South Asia, where things aren't necessarily talked about. So I had a variety of vocalists singing Hindi, Punjabi, Urdu, covering these type of topics. Originally it was based off the ghazal form, but then it kind of branched out and became its own lyrical type of thing. So it's a fusion of that Indian aspect with jazz music.
So my last question is, of course, DooBeeDooBeeDoo is always interested in fusion of cultures, and so being an Indian, do you feel being an Indian doing music in America, in New York, and what does your Indian background give New York?
Well,
are you conscious about being...
Well, I am conscious, but I wouldn't say that for me it's so black and white as I'm Indian growing up in America, or I'm a New Yorker. I mean, there's so many aspects to me that make up the parchment of the music that gets resonated here, you know. Certainly my Indian culture informs that, but certainly the music I grew up with as a child, you know, classic rock, Hindustani classical music, jazz music, that all informs my playing and my composition. Living in New York informs that, my travels inform that. So it's a bit of everything. I mean, you know, I obviously identify being Indian, being Punjabi, being an Indian American, but it's not necessarily something that I wear on my sleeve saying I'm Indian and I grew up in America and I live in New York. It's a little more, I guess, fluid than that, you know, in terms of the way
But me personally, also being myself a musician, Iranian, I would love to see you to give more of Indian taste, colors into the music scene here, because actually I'm bored of the normal thing you call jazz or world music, you have the chance to give that new thing, like European stuff, European jazz. So
well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, the way I grew up in my culture definitely informs my compositional process. It's not contrived when I do it. Definitely that music seeps out. The music of my motherland, of India, seeps out in any music I compose or play. But is it done in a contrived manner? Not at all, because that to me isn't being honest. That isn't music. It's not to come on the scene and say, okay, I'm an Indian American jazz musician, I'm just going to play all Indian music, you know?
Right.
There's so many different types of music I grew up with. Absolutely, it does set me maybe slightly differently apart from other jazz musicians, but I think when you play music, compose music, you have to be honest and play yourself. If you come from a gospel background, that music's got to seep in. If you come from a go-go background, if you come from a Latin background, all that music has to seep into what you compose. I don't approach it where I try and play like Billy Joe Jones of the 1950s. I grew up studying the masters and replicating what they played. Amazing vocabulary that they laid out for us, but the idea that all these musicians did is they took that music and made it their own and put some more back into it. And so that's how I approach music.
Good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank
Sunny, you brought sun to the rainy evening.
I guess so, right?
It was great to see you, and hope to see you with Red Baraat then next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Appreciate it.